Greetings! We're going to create this look today. Resin art. We're taking a plain canvas. I have prepped it by putting gold paint on it. And then once that dried, I went ahead and mixed up some resin. And as you can see, I'm doing a thin coat of clear resin, just a skim coat to get the piece prepped, because resin moves a whole lot easier if you've got a base coat down. And my color coat, I really want to move it around and do some interesting things with it. So that's what you're watching me do right now. I started out with a popsicle stick and then quickly segued into just using my fingers because it's just really easier for me and quicker to get it done, spread out evenly, and we're good to go. I did heat it up, as you could see, a little bit so that it moves easier. And this is a 24-hour cure on this resin. I didn't use a quick coat epoxy resin because I want to really play around with this and I didn't want to be under the gun. So I've got an open time of about 40 minutes on this. I split up the resin into different colors. As you can see, I started with a green. I added a purple in there, white, and I've also got a little bit of gold in there. I feel like these colors could be kind of interesting together, so we'll see what they create. I'm adding some yellow. I don't think I mentioned that. And that'll be coming in just a minute. I've sped this video up because it's really gets kind of long if I don't. So we've got this going at double time, just in case you were wondering. But really, this is playtime. You're just kind of putting the colors down on the canvas. There's no real rhyme or reason. I'm just creating, just being very free with it. I know it looks like a hot mess, but stick with me because you get a really interesting look, as you saw from the opening. It really comes out beautiful. So, or at least in my opinion, it does. So we're getting about, I think I mixed up about 8 ounces of resin on this project. And like I said, I split it up into different cups of color, then left the clear, an extra amount behind just in case I decided I wanted to mix up more of one color or another. And we're just emptying all the cups out onto the canvas. I will go ahead and list out the colors in the description box below so that you'll know what I used. But I've been basically working with just resin pastes, which are very highly pigmented. So you got to be careful when you use them, otherwise they make a mess everywhere. At least my messy painting world, they do. I did not actually have a green. So what I did is I took a Just Resin Blue and a Just Resin Yellow pigment, and I started putting the yellow in first, and then all I needed was a little bit of the blue to come up with this really cool Kelly green color that I was extremely pleased with how it turned out. And you can see there that I did just go ahead and add the yellow, which I think really makes the piece pop. It's interesting, the purple almost disappears, as does the gold, but and the final product, but I really liked the moodiness that it kind of gave to it. Gave it a little bit more depth on it. And the white that I used was a titanium white, and it helps activate the cells, and I was really happy with the look. So here we're going, finishing out the rest of the cups, getting all the color that I can down on the board. I saved some clear resin at the end because I thought, well, gee, I'm probably going to want to add in, I'm going to run out of a color. It just always happens. So I went ahead and mixed up, I think it's going to show here in a minute that I went ahead and mixed up a little bit more of some of the other colors. These popsicle sticks are good to use when you're getting the product out of the cup, and also it's good to manipulate the colors on the board if you want to move them around in a certain way or create some veins or just split up the colors a little bit more because you've got a big puddle of something that you don't like. Now I'm going ahead and applying my heat gun, and I've got the temperature up fairly high, and I've got the fan setting on high because what I'm trying to do is warm it up, and as you can see, as it warms up, then it will start moving. So between using this platypus flat attachment on my heat gun, it really gets in there and concentrates the heat and gets the resin moving. Additionally, I'm tilting the board, and that's helping to get the resin to move. It's slower at first, but as you get it going, it will start moving a lot. And when you get it warmed up to a certain point, you'll be able to tell that it starts really moving. And then you want to be careful how much heat you put on after that, because you do not want to have it all run off your board. And the other thing is, it's kind of important to have a level surface that you're setting it on, so when you're done tilting and it's curing, that you've got a level surface. And using canvas can be tricky because resin's got some weight to it, so you want to be careful that you don't get too heavy coats of resin on it. Otherwise, it's going to be a problem with your canvas kind of drooping in the middle or sagging in the middle. And here you see I'm just continuing to play, move it around. I really love how it just kind of melds together and just gives you some kind of floaty designs. And you can already see some of the cells starting with the white as the resin rolls over, the different colors roll over each other. And I'm tilting it in all different directions for two reasons. One, I'm trying to get movement just in a lot of different directions. My idea was to kind of create the look of a water scene, but looking straight down into the water. So that's why I was moving it around like that. And also I want to get coverage across the whole board. I really don't want any negative space on this particular one, and I'm really interested to see how the gold background works with these colors. I've done just white backgrounds, I've done a black background, and the background really does end up making a difference with your resin projects. So I was kind of excited how this gold was looking. And as you can see, there's purple in there, but it's almost turning gray as it spreads out. So I found that kind of interesting. And sorry if I'm tilting this where you can't quite see everything perfectly. Sometimes when you get going on creating, you forget you're on camera. And you forget to hold the piece so that the camera can see the whole thing all the time. But hopefully you can see enough of it to get the idea of what we're doing here. So I kind of move it in one direction, and then I tilt it and go back in the other direction, and then I'll, twist it around and move it really to all four corners is where we're going. So I just think this is super cool. People do these with paint pours, and they can be really cool also, but there's just something about resin. Just really am enjoying playing with this in all the different colors. And as you can see, there's some resin flying off the board, but I'm really trying to keep that to a minimum. And I will actually use some of that resin because if I didn't get all the way to the edge on one part or another, as you can see, you can scrape up and apply the resin to the edges of your board. And certainly as you go around the side corners, you know, all those 4 edges, you can take that popsicle stick, scrape up the resin, and apply it to the corners and the edges. I don't always put a frame around my canvases, so I really want to make sure that there's resin that covers all of the surface, even going around the corners. And again, here I'm using a little bit more heat to disperse the resin. And if you can look in that upper right corner there, you can start seeing those little round cells creating. Sometimes it's hard to know when to stop. I love the look of this wave, and I was really almost ready to stop here and leave a little bit of negative space with this wave on the left. It was just really cool. But I just kept going. So that's the fun of this art, is that you just go and play and stop when you feel like it. And this layer of resin is going to end up being pretty thin, so it's not going to do a whole lot after I'm done manipulating it. We'll have some more cells creating, but it's not really going to run and move off the board. I didn't mix up enough resin to do that. It's a very thin layer, just enough to get over the entire board and barely get over the corners. I do that for 2 reasons. One is I don't really want to waste the resin by pouring up too much, mixing up too much, and then having it all fall off the sides of the board. That's kind of crazy to me. So less is more in my world. And if you don't always have even coverage, if you're doing a piece of art like this, you know, sometimes the texture of not having completely 100% coverage makes for an interesting piece, in my mind. I'm very fascinated with textures. And some of the quick set resins are fun to play with as far as textures, because when you get to that edge where they're starting to set up and you're still playing with it, you can get some interesting highs and lows in it. And there you see where I'm just adding some more resin to the corners, getting to those edges. And I'm also going to go through here and look at if there's any dry spots. Sometimes with resin, you'll get a dry spot just arbitrarily somewhere in the middle of the piece. You get a little, like a reverse bubble, where it's just like the resin's going all around, but it's not attaching to one little piece of your surface. So you can go in there and tap it with your finger, and sometimes that will work, and sometimes nothing will adhere to that little spot. And that, with an art project, it's not like a countertop. So, I mean, I'm not looking for perfection in the smoothness. So sometimes that can create an interest. So I'm running around the edges right now, making sure I've got resin, coating all of my edges, scraping up some from the surface underneath, and just going around all 4 sides. Okay, I'm pretty much just going to keep playing with this a little bit, so that's what you're going to see for the next minute or so in this video, and just play around with my surfaces. But I pretty much am done with heating it up and moving it around. I'm not going to be tilting it anymore. I'm just going to play around a little bit with the edges. Hope you don't mind this voiceover, but sometimes it's hard to create and narrate at the same time. So I just pretty much turned the camera on and let it run while I was creating this piece and figured I could come back and tell y'all what I was doing later. And as you can see, I really try and use every last ounce of resin that I've got. If you take a look at the left side, I've got some molds at the ready so that if I ever have leftover resin that's not going on my canvas or on my project, I've got molds ready that I can pour the balance of the resin in those molds, and they'll be ready for another project. Resin is not the cheapest medium to use, so you really don't want to waste it. And there, I'm filling in some of those holes. And pretty soon we're going to get to the end of this playing around session, and you'll get a couple of seconds of the finished product. Hope you enjoy.